Welcome to Fight Scorecards. On today's episode, we have Ben from the Animalitia Podcast and Jacob from XYMYTH.
Hey, I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me on. Cool thing you're doing. I'm excited to be here. I feel good. I'm excited.
That's good to hear, man. Who actually suggested this fight?
I went on a rant about Birds of Prey. I thought it was really good in terms of just being a well-made, entertaining film. When you had brought up your show and coming on, like that was the first thing that came to mind, just because I've talked about it on my show, so I thought it'd be kind of fun to bring a perspective to it over here.
Yeah, and if for those out there who are not familiar with Ben's show, we actually just made an appearance on his podcast. We just did recording just before this, and we'll be giving a link to it in the description so you guys can check out our interview after this episode. Let's get into this fight here. From the moment this fight starts, there's this one very heavy aspect to this fight. I use the word heavy because I feel like it really displays the weight of what's happening in this fight, and that, of course, is the water that we see in this jail scene. From the moment we see any person landing in this water as this fight is happening, we get the sense that there's all this weight of movement happening every single time, and it's visually shown through these huge puddles that are coming up every single time someone slammed down. And I thought that was an interesting little visual getting into it. I know Jacob had some more choice words about it.
Well, I'll just say outright, I haven't watched this movie, so I wouldn't understand the context of this fight. And if I did, it probably would register a little bit better. But just on the surface level, I feel it's a little safe. Combine water and these super bright lights and obviously the slow motion. Yeah, of course it's gonna look pretty cool. But then at the same time, it's a blank gray room that we're in with a bunch of cells. And the only color is Harley Quinn, which is probably intentional. I see what you're saying. The water is really the only thing that says anything about the impact of what she's doing here. Because I watched this scene and she's literally knocking these guys out off of these seemingly weak takedowns and flips. Like, it doesn't look like they should be knocked out at all. When I'm watching, I literally just watched the John Wick 3 scene, and he's fighting these people, he's taking them down, and they just will not stop fighting him. And in this, she just takes them down so easily and with their thing. And I get it, it's comic booky, but I feel like they could have done some better stuff than just some slow motion flips.
He brings up an interesting point. I totally see his perspective there. What he said is kind of what I liked about it. So a big problem I have with Hollywood, especially with big budget films, more of them need to simplify things. There are some amazing action films and fight scenes from B-level movies that have very small budgets. And in those films, there's less politics involved because there's less money on the table. So it allows like the actors and the stunt coordinators to have more creative control over the fight scenes. And honestly, it looks better. So I'm going to shit on something for a second. The last Fast and Furious movie, the Hobbs and Shaw.
Oh my God.
Okay, yeah, that's horseshit.
I think this is like the best example I can think of. I love The Rock. I love Jason Statham. I think they're both great and like some of the most talented at their profession on the planet. Oh. So that film had a $200 million budget, and they're both spectacular. The fights in that were horseshit. Like the camera angles, it was shaky. What I really think it comes down to is the bigger the budget, the more
oversight.
Oh, exactly. Yes, yeah. Oversight.
More studio interference.
Yep. So there's less creative control given to the stunt coordinators and the actors who actually know how to coordinate fights. So Jason Statham has a lot of B films. There's this one movie I saw, I don't remember the name of it. It might have had a budget of like $5 to $8 million. The fight scenes in that are terrific. The camera work's great. The stunt coordination's amazing. And it's probably because they gave Jason Statham, who's super talented, the creative control to do the fight how he wanted. Fast and Furious, Hobbs and Shaw, it was the total opposite and looks like horseshit. Yeah. So this brings me back to my point of simplifying a fight scene. That's kind of the direction they went, and it was a little lackluster. Like Margot Robbie did very, very simple like moves and stuff, but it was very fluid. It was very on pace, on target, and the camera work was really good. They had, God forbid, they had still shots, and then they would move to a different shot on a different angle, and like the camera would move with the fight or the motion, but it wasn't like too fast. It wasn't too slow. Exactly.
It was subtle. It was, yeah, it was very unnoticeable and clean. Like the editing was on point, I'd say.
Yeah,
And
definitely
so-
to its credit. Yeah.
In my opinion, it was kind of a less is more approach. And I think it was just kind of different from what we've seen a lot of recently with Hollywood films. And I thought it looked good. And the last thing I want to throw out with that is Margot Robbie had a better looking fight scene as far as the fluidity of it and the camera work. It looked better than Jason Statham in The Rock in Fast and Furious.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
That's kind of crazy to pull off. So that's kind of what I liked about it. But I definitely see where you're coming from, though.
Yeah, I feel like when you have a character like Harley Quinn, I feel like there's opportunity in here to make this fight silly and crazy, but they kind of just threw her into a bunch of wrestling moves and just throwing people and somehow knocking them out when they're just falling flat on their backs into water. Like, I don't know, I just don't feel the force or the impact in this, and I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's the camera angles or literally just the moves themselves, but the only real impact I feel is like when she's hitting people with her gun.
Another one, another one, another one, another one, and another one.
I could definitely understand, like, she's really destroying those guys, but then the other people, not so much.
Well, the one guy backflips just from being hit.
Yeah,
with the gun.
I just seen that backflip.
that was very comic booky, that moment. I mean, you mentioned wrestling moves. The only wrestling moves I was able to point out here, she did 2 arm drags at one point. That was kind of impressive to see, I guess, despite, how it looked kind of like, how is she actually doing it? But I was able to buy into it because, they even like had her slide off the ground using the momentum of all the water there to trip that one guy on the way out. I definitely see the comic booky influence in there. And, to DC's credit, I really do feel personally that Birds of Prey is the first time in this line of DC films where they've really found their voice. This whole movie felt like a good balance of like, let's be creative, let's also allow ourselves to be a little bit more mature with what we're doing since, we're under that brand where we can do that at DC. And it worked. I think this did way better things for Harley Quinn's character than Suicide Squad did. And I mean, that's not saying much because, Suicide Squad was...
Well, yeah, that's a point to think about too. Like, this character was basically salvaged from the dumpster fire of Suicide Squad.
Totally, yeah.
And they made this film out of it. It's pretty impressive. I think people probably had terribly low expectations for it because of that and because of the character coming from that movie. But it's interesting kind of though what you say about DC kind of finding their footing with this film. On a side note, I think they did some fun stuff on incorporating sort of the Gotham universe into the film. So they would reference the Joker a few times, but they didn't make him a focal point. I thought that was really good how they did it, because I think kind of throwing the name in there sort of brought you into this world of Gotham City, but they could have pushed that a lot more than they did. And they restrained themselves on it, which I think was really beneficial to the story. Yeah. And I think it really helped have more focus on the Harley Quinn character. Everything
that you mentioned about like immersing people in the world, I felt that worked a lot with this film too, because anywhere Harley Quinn would go, she had enemies everywhere, like throughout the entire city of Gotham. I thought that was a neat little thing they did with the film, where there would be a storyline going on, but then also she would just be chased down by so many people throughout this whole movie, because all these people she's wronged. I thought that was interesting. It helped immerse me in it. I'm like, oh, she's messing with a lot of people in this city.
Yeah. No, that was great. It was great for the character development and like the story, but it was also just fun. It was funny because, I mean, that's totally how it would be. She's rolling with the Joker. She'd be fucking over everybody she could.
I'm thankful they didn't put Jared Leto Joker in this movie. I'm definitely.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
I'm definitely thankful about that.
Good God. Oh man.
You can look forward to him in the Snyder Cut. Allegedly.
Yeah.
Oh. That about wraps it up. I mean, it's a pretty short fight here. As I mentioned, you could find us over on Ben's podcast, the Animalitia Podcast.
On that show, we talk about horror, entertainment, film, kind of hit on current events, life topics, and just kind of talk some shit. We have a little bit of experience in some of the shit we talk about. So, like, I went to film school. I did pro wrestling for a little bit. I'm a published author. So some of the entertainment themed stuff that we talk about is, I hope my goal is to have a different perspective than other things you hear, but also I don't want to take myself too seriously. So I like to have fun. And I think that's something that's missing from a lot of podcasts, any media in general, because let's face it, like this last year and just kind of the environment right now in general, it's a lot of like shit wall to wall, like toxic people, toxic opinions. I want to just be fucking goofy and have a good time, share unpopular opinions, and I hope people will listen to those or send me hate mail on them.
But yeah, that about does it for this episode, guys. If you would like to suggest any particular fight you'd like to see covered on this show, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below, and we will pick the top voted comment to be a future fight covered on the Scorecard series. It could be from any medium, guys. Film fight, anime fight, I don't know. Give us a fight from like a video game or a book. Whatever the case is, guys, we will cover it. We will break it down on this show. But that about does it. Thanks for coming on the show today, guys. And you can check out Jacob and I over on Patreon, our comic books and our novel series over on there. Just want to quickly thank anyone who's been supporting it. Really appreciate all of your support that you guys have been putting out for us. That about does it. Thanks for coming on the show, guys.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me. It's awesome to talk to you.
No problem.
Awesome catching up.
Yep. Talk to you guys soon.
Definitely.